world events do not occur by accident. They are made to happen. I mean, what a statement,
Yep.
right? And that's how Henry Makow starts his book, Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. So today we're going deep, really deep into some of his theories. We're going to look at this idea, this whole thing about, a secret society basically controlling everything, all the global events.
Yeah, Makow, he doesn't mess around, does he? Gets right into it. Claims this group, they're called the Illuminati, and they're the ones orchestrating, well, everything. And he's specifically saying it's these elite Jewish bankers, these Freemasons, they're the ones behind it all.
Oh, okay. So right away, this is controversial stuff, to say the least. What exactly, what's the basis of his argument? What's he building this on?
Well, for him, it all boils down to it's all about money, the control of money. He's saying that this group, they have power because they have a grip on the world's finances, right? The whole system. And he goes back, way back to these European banking families, a lot of them Jewish, who basically got the power to print money back in the day, money that was backed by, well, the credit of nations.
So wait, he's talking about how central banking systems came about.
Exactly. And he uses this pretty powerful quote from Thomas Edison, of all people. Edison said, "It is absurd to say our country can issue bonds and cannot issue currency." And he goes on, "Both are promises to pay, but one fattens the user and the other helps the people." So Makow is arguing this system, this whole system, it's designed to benefit just a small group, a select few, at the expense of, well, everyone else.
It's fascinating that he uses Thomas Edison.
Yeah.
Edison, most people think of him as like the inventor, the light bulb guy, not someone who'd get into conspiracy theories.
Yep.
But okay, so how does Makow then tie all this history stuff, this central banking stuff, to the Illuminati?
Well, he brings in this key figure, this guy named Adam Weishaupt. And supposedly, this guy, Weishaupt, he was hired by Mayor Amschel Rothschild to start this secret society. And the goal of this society was to infiltrate and basically completely overturn society, subvert it from the inside out. And Makow says that's how the Illuminati was born.
Okay, and what were they after? What were their goals? What were they trying to do exactly?
Makow says, and he's using, accounts from people who supposedly left the Illuminati, defectors. He's using their stories. And they say the agenda was pretty radical. They wanted to get rid of, abolish monarchy, private property, patriotism, family, religion, even religion. I mean, that's like tearing down the whole system as we know it.
Wow, yeah. That's some serious stuff. So how is he saying they went about pursuing these goals? How did they do it?
He says Freemasonry, that was a big part of it. Weishaupt, he supposedly used this existing group, Freemasonry, as a front. Basically, the Illuminati were hiding in plain sight. And there's even this quote directly from Weishaupt. He said, "None is fitter than the 3 lower degrees of Freemasonry. The public is accustomed to it, expects little from it, and therefore takes little notice of it."
So he's saying this group, they were already out there operating in the shadows centuries ago, using these systems, these structures that were already in place to push their agenda.
That's exactly what he's saying. And he goes even further. He's claiming that the goals of the Illuminati, these crazy goals we talked about, those are the same goals that communism is after, and this idea of a new world order, like it's all connected.
Wow, that's a big jump, connecting events and ideas across, hundreds of years. And it all goes back to this Illuminati group. I mean, what kind of proof, what kind of evidence does he have to back all this up?
He's using a bunch of things. He analyzes history. He looks at what key figures wrote. He tries to make connections between events and specific people. He's trying to put together a story that supports what he's saying. But a lot of the stuff he relies on, the sources, they're considered, pretty fringe, pretty out there.
Okay, so we've talked about the history, how he sets that up, and we talked about the supposed goals of the Illuminati, what Makow says they want. But there's another piece here, a big piece, and it's probably the most controversial part of his book. He calls it the Jewish question.
Yeah, this is where things get complicated, really complicated, and sensitive for sure. Makow is directly saying that Jews are involved in this whole conspiracy. He's arguing that Judaism, the religion itself, it has this built-in ideology of supremacy and domination. And because of that, Jews are vulnerable to being used as tools by the Illuminati.
That's a very strong accusation. What's he using to back that up?
Yeah.
What evidence does he give for that?
He uses a lot of historical quotes, talks about events, and he's interpreting them, well, through the lens of his theory, of course. For example, he has this quote, says something like, "The Jewish people, they'll all become their own messiah, and they'll rule over everything by uniting all the races and getting rid of all the borders." And Makow's saying, see, this shows that Judaism has this deep desire for power and control,
Yeah.
baked right in.
We have to be very clear here. Makow's views on Judaism, they're not mainstream, not at all. He's essentially saying that an entire religion is set up to control the world.
Right. And then he brings up this idea, the Jewish egregore. It's like a group mind, a collective mind, or a thought form, something like that, that he says influences Jewish elites, how they act.
That's pretty abstract, hard to understand, really.
Mhm.
What does he mean by that, this Jewish egregore?
He says it's this force operating, beneath the surface. It's not something that individual Jews are aware of, but it drives them, pushes them towards this goal, a collective goal of power and influence. He doesn't really explain where it came from or how it actually works. So, yeah, it's pretty mysterious, open to interpretation for sure.
He's really going out on a limb here. He's attributing specific motives, specific goals to a whole group of people, and it's all based on their religion.
Definitely risky. When you're making those kinds of claims, these sweeping claims, you have to be very careful, or you can easily misinterpret or misrepresent things that are complex, like historical and religious ideas. It's important for people to understand that Makow, he has his own perspective, and it definitely has biases, limitations.
So we've talked about the history stuff, the central banking, the goals of the Illuminati, what Makow says they are, and we've touched on this Jewish question, which is, well, really controversial. But how does Makow say this group, how do they actually work in the world? How do they influence things?
That's where this idea of control through deception comes in. That's what he calls it. He's basically saying that the Illuminati, they're the ones setting things up. They're staging events. They often control both sides of a conflict just to create, chaos. And they use that chaos to move their agenda forward.
He's saying they're manipulating global events.
Yes.
On a huge scale.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us an example? Like, what kind of events is he talking about?
Oh, he points to things like the Bolshevik Revolution, Nazi Germany, the Cold War, even the War on Terror. All these huge events, he's saying those were all orchestrated, not just random things happening, carefully planned and manipulated.
So in Makow's mind, it's not just separate historical events happening. It's like one long chain of these manipulations, all leading towards whatever the Illuminati's ultimate goal is.
That's his argument. It's all connected, he says. These things aren't just random, isolated things happening. They're all part of this bigger puzzle.
Yeah.
And it's this shadowy elite pulling the strings.
That's a lot to take in,
Yeah.
It makes you think about, like, how much control we really have over, our own lives, our own world, and how much of history is predetermined or manipulated, like he says.
No question. It's challenging stuff. Makow is definitely making us question some basic assumptions about how power works, how control works, and how history actually unfolds. He's asking us to think differently about the narratives, the stories we've always been told, and consider, different interpretations, even if they sound pretty far out.
Yeah, a lot to think about, for sure. And we've only just scratched the surface here. So last time, remember, we were digging into Henry Makow and his book, Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. We talked about, this idea of secret society calling all the shots, running the world from behind the scenes.
Yeah, we went over how he says they got started, what their goals are, how they want to change everything. And of course, we talked about the Jewish question, which is, well, a whole other thing and pretty controversial.
And don't forget, we talked about control through deception. That's what he calls it. Basically, he's saying the Illuminati, they're the ones who start these conflicts, wars, whatever, just to, stir things up, create chaos. And they use that to get what they want.
Right. But Makow goes even further. He says it's not just big historical events that they're controlling. It's way more than that. It's it's in our daily lives, It's the culture, what we believe, even how we think. That's how deep this goes.
So it's not just wars and revolutions. He's talking about like a more subtle kind of manipulation, something we might not even notice.
Yeah, exactly. He's talking about the media, the entertainment industry, the education system, all of that. He says they use these things as tools, to push their agenda. And they do it in sneaky ways, like subliminal messages and, just straight up propaganda.
Hold on. So he's saying that even like the stuff we watch for fun, the news we read, that could all be part of this this big plan to control us.
That's his argument. He wants us to really think about everything we see and hear, everything we read. Ask ourselves, is there a hidden agenda here? Am I being tricked?
It makes me think of that idea, manufacturing consent. Like those in power, they can control what people think just by controlling what they see in the media. Does Makow talk about that?
He does, yeah. He definitely sees the media as a powerful tool, a way to control the narrative, shape how people see the world. And he uses examples, of bias, censorship, times when people who disagree, they're silenced. And he says that's all proof that the Illuminati, they're the ones controlling the information we get.
Makes you think about how things are today, right?
Yeah.
With social media and everything, all these different news sources. Does Makow's theory, does it still make sense in the digital age?
That's a good question. His book, it came out way before all the social media stuff exploded.
Yeah.
But what he's worried about, this media control manipulation, it's, if anything, it's even more relevant now, don't you think?
Yeah, he might even say that those, what do they call them, echo chambers, filter bubbles online?
Yeah.
That's exactly how the Illuminati would want it, right? Divide everyone, keep them in their little groups, feed them different information.
It's easy to see how his theory could fit with, the digital world. The question is there actual proof, real evidence? Because a lot of what Makow uses, it's like anecdotes, stories, interpretations of things that you could explain in other ways.
So even though his ideas, they might tap into some of those anxieties people have about media, about technology, we still need to be skeptical, right? Look for solid evidence.
Exactly. We can't just take it all at face value. Got to be critical, separate what's real, what you can prove from just speculation.
Okay, so let's switch gears for a minute. Let's talk about solutions. What does Makow say we can do about all this? If we, just for the sake of argument, we say, okay, the Illuminatis are real and they're as powerful as he says, what can we do? Are we just stuck?
Makow says no. He says knowledge, that's the key. Knowledge is power. If we understand how the Illuminati work, their methods, what they want, then we can start to resist them.
So it's like intellectual self-defense.
Yeah.
Arm yourself with knowledge so you can fight back against this manipulation.
Exactly. He talks a lot about critical thinking, doing your own research, not just accepting what you're told. And he wants people to, connect with each other, find others who think the same way, build communities, support different sources of information, stuff outside the mainstream.
It's like he's promoting a resistance, but it's from the ground up, empowering people to take back control of their own minds and challenge the system.
Yeah, that's a big part of his message. He really believes in individual action. He says that's the key to fighting back against the Illuminati. If we wake up, if we see what they're doing, then we can start to take back control, create a world that's more fair, more just.
That message, it appeals to a lot of people, especially people who are disillusioned. They don't trust the mainstream institutions, the official narratives. It's like they want truth, they want transparency, and they want to feel like they have some control over their own lives.
Makow, even though he's controversial, he definitely gets people talking, talking about power, control, what's real, what's not. He pushes us to question things, to challenge authority, and to get involved, to shape the world.
Okay, so we've talked about how Makow says the Illuminati control the media, what he says we can do about it, and that idea, individual resistance.
But we're not done yet. There's another part to his theory, another layer, and this gets into some really dark stuff.
Yeah, next time we're gonna explore what Makow says about mind control and what he calls Illuminati sex slaves.
Yeah, get ready. It's about to get pretty intense.
Okay, so we're back. And we're still going deep with Henry Makow and his book, Illuminati, The Cult That Hijacked the World. In the last couple of parts, remember, we talked about all this stuff about a secret society running the world, controlling the media, the money. And we touched on that Jewish question, which is, well, Definitely a controversial part of this whole theory. But now it gets really, really dark.
Yeah, this is where Makow's theory takes a pretty disturbing turn. He starts talking about these Illuminati sex slaves and how they use mind control, trauma-based mind control. He even he brings in people like Kathy O'Brien, who claims she was one of them. She describes, these horrible things: abuse, brainwashing, exploitation, the whole nine yards.
This is obviously really sensitive stuff. We want to be, careful here and respectful of anyone who says they went through something like this.
For sure, for sure. It's hard to even hear about this stuff. It's so awful. And Makow, he uses these accounts, these stories, to show just uh, how depraved he thinks the Illuminati are. He's saying they use these techniques, this mind control stuff, to create like programmable people, assets basically, who they can use for whatever they want: prostitution, drug trafficking, even political espionage.
He even says, like, they use these people as diplomats, lobbyists. They get them into the government, at the highest levels.
Right. Makow wants us to question everything, everyone, even the people who are supposedly in charge. He's saying the Illuminati, their reach, it goes way further than we think.
It's hard to wrap your head around this, this idea that this huge conspiracy, this horrible stuff that's all happening, and almost nobody knows about it.
That's where all the deception comes in and the mind control. Makow says the Illuminati, they're masters of manipulation. They control the information. They silence anyone who speaks out. They create all these layers of secrecy, and they use fear, intimidation to keep their victims quiet.
So it's like we're living in this fake reality, this illusion, and we don't even know it.
That's a big part of his message. Yeah, he's saying, wake up, see through the lies, the propaganda, the stuff that's everywhere in our society. Be skeptical of everything, especially anything that comes from official sources, the mainstream media.
But if everything's a lie, how do we know what's real? How can we trust anything?
Well, Makow says we gotta think for ourselves, think critically, do our own research, look for different perspectives.
Yeah.
Don't just follow the crowd. He says connect with people who are asking the same questions, build communities, and support information sources that are outside the mainstream.
Sounds like a tall order.
It is, yeah. Makow doesn't give us easy answers. He's just laying out his theory, and he's saying, hey, it's up to you. Question things, research, think for yourself. He believes that if we become aware of the manipulation, then we can take back some of that control and start living more authentically.
So we've been through a lot with Henry Makow and his book Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. We've looked at how he says they control the money, their goals, this Jewish question, and now this really dark stuff, sex slaves, mind control. It's a lot to process.
Definitely. And it's important to remember Makow, he's way out there,
Okay.
What he says, it's controversial, and you got to be critical, think for yourself. It's up to each person to, look at his claims, the evidence, and decide for themselves what they believe.
Yeah, whether you buy into Makow's theories or not, he definitely he makes you think. He makes you think about power, control, what's real, all that stuff. And he's challenging us, right, to think critically, to be aware of how we can be manipulated, and to really take responsibility for what we believe about the world.
This whole deep dive, it's been one man's take, one perspective, a deep dive into a theory that's complex and controversial, no doubt. We're not giving you definitive answers here, just trying to get you thinking, get the conversation going, and maybe inspire you to keep exploring these topics.
Exactly. We always say, do your own research, question everything, and never stop searching for the truth. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everybody.